Good evening. Once again, it's great to see everyone out. Hope you've had a great day. It's been a beautiful day outside. And again, lighting up God's beauty. It's warm enough to be able to enjoy without being too burdensome in regards to the heat. I was actually able to get out and do actually a little bit of work without sweating. So that's a positive for me anyway. So I hope you had a great day today. And as always, it's a great day we can come together to worship the Lord. Give me just 1 second here. I don't quite have something right here. And that's all right. Tonight, we're going to conclude our summer song series. And this is something that, again, I've done for the last 4 years. This is the 5th series that I've done. And so we are getting into the conclusion of what we've been doing for the last 3 months. And that is taking a look at songs in our songbook and taking a deep look at what those songs mean, where those songs come from, the purpose that they were written, and as we sing these songs, what they mean to us. And again, the whole purpose of doing this is just to take a deeper look into a requirement, a commandment that we're given. As we talked about this morning, we do have a commandment to sing. Whether that's good, bad, whatever it is, we are told to sing with our hearts to God, and that's part of why we are here tonight and this morning. And every worship service is sing praises to God. So understanding the songs that we sing, the lyrics that we sing, and why they are so important to me is a big part of that song service. And understanding truly what we are singing. And tonight we're ending one that was requested to me, and I'll be honest, I kind of procrastinated because I don't know this song very well. But as I told Ken this morning, he was the one that suggested it. It's been a perfect end to this series because it's a beautiful song, wonderful message. And I think there's a great one to end on tonight. And so since I wasn't able to do it last week, we're going to end with this one tonight, and that is Be Still My Soul. We have sung this song a time or two. As a matter of fact, earlier this afternoon, because my throat's been a little not really up to par, I wasn't quite sure if I could sing it tonight, so I kind of reached out to others if they'd be willing to help out, and I had a couple reach out. And I told them I think I could go ahead and do it. But this is kind of a tricky song in order to sing. We haven't really sung it a whole lot. It's one that I haven't really heard a lot of. But one that when we look at the message and when we look at the writing, the words, the lyrics, this is a beautiful song. And one that I think that we should probably look at more and more as we worship together in the future. So our final part tonight, I don't think they've ever been able to get 9 lessons in with this series. But our 9th installment here is Be Still My Soul. And as always, we're going to take a look at the author first. And there's kind of a mixed bag here with the author, in that this song really has 3 people. Now, if you want to go ahead and be turning to this song, it is number 87 in the Big Red Book. Number 87 in the Big Red Book, Be Still My Soul. And as I have often done before, pointed out the authors. If you look there at the bottom of the page, I think it's at the bottom of your version, all right, that usually tells you who wrote the song, who wrote the arrangement. Sometimes there's more than one name. Sometimes the one name, the name of the left, is the one that wrote the lyrics. The one on the right either wrote the music or maybe even wrote the arrangement of the song. In this case, we've got 3 names here, and all 3 had their own contributions as to the version that we sing tonight. We start with the main name, Katharina von Schleicher. And as I did my research on her, there's really not a whole lot that can be found. We do know that she was a German hymn writer in the 18th century. She was born, I think, in 1697. Died sometime in the 1700s. One version says 1777. I don't know if that was accurate or not. I actually tried to find a picture of her, and there were a couple pictures that popped up, but I wasn't sure if it was of her or of someone else. If there are multiple names used here, there's a lot of mystery surrounding the true author of this song. She is the one that wrote the lyrics. All 3 verses here were written by Katharina von Schleicher. And if you know anything about German history, then that is typically von Schleicher more of an aristocratic name, meaning that she might have come from some kind of nobility. But that's not all we know. We know that she was a hymn writer in the 18th century. We know who her parents were, but a lot of her middle to late life is really unknown. There was a suggestion that she might be a Lutheran nun. And given the time period here, that is very possible. I mentioned this morning, as we look at the Protestant Reformation, which was a religious movement in the early 1500s, really the breaking away of the Catholic Church, which led to all these denominations. A big turning point in regards to Christianity across the world. The Lutheran Church was the first Protestant denomination, and it was in modern-day Germany that movement began. So I think that this is probably pretty accurate in the fact that she was a nun within the Lutheran Church. Or if she wasn't a nun, that she has some kind of position within the Lutheran Church. But not a whole lot is known about her outside of the fact that she wrote these lyrics. We don't know why the song was written. We can take a look at the lyrics and have an idea about what it's about, but really don't know what was going through her mind as we wrote this song. As you notice, the name on the right is Jean Sibelius. And Mr. Sibelius, at least to me, is much more well known. John Sibelius was born in 1865, died in 1957, and that's a picture of Mr. Sibelius. When I was in college at UNA, I was a music major, and part of my classes were learning how to write music. I had several theory classes, and there were a couple of classes where I had to use an electronic music maker, to where there's a program, you put the notes on there and it makes music, and the program was called Sibelius, named after Jean Sibelius. So he is a very famous composer that was from Finland. And so the lyrics itself was written by Katharina von Schlegel. The music, the tune, was written by Mr. Sibelius and was from his piece called the Finlandia. He wrote a piece called the Finlandia, written in 1899, and it was actually written as a protest to Russian rule over Finland. If you don't know about this, Russia actually controlled Finland for many years, and as you get into the turn of the century, Russia had really honed in on a lot of censorship of Finnish material, patriotic songs. As a matter of fact, the name of this piece is called Finlandia. They actually had to change the name officially so that the Russians wouldn't outlaw it. But it was a patriotic piece devoted to Finland itself. And the last part of that song becomes the tune of Be Still My Soul. And I actually listened to the whole thing earlier. The first part is very minor chords, very kind of honed into a darker side, but the last half is based around the tune that we have there. And the last name here is Jane Borthwick. And so as we look at the song, Be Still My Soul, we know that it was written in 1752. The lyrics by von Schlegel. The music comes from Finlandia, written by Sibelius in 1899. And the translation into English comes from a woman named Jane Borthwick, who translated this into English in 1855. Not really going to talk a lot about her because she pretty much just translated this from German into English. So that's the reason for the three names and the three very different dates that we see there at the bottom of the page. Regardless of the purpose, we see that the lyrics of the song, there's a lot of depth to these. We have three verses, and the whole tune or the whole purpose of this can be very simple, but with a lot of deep emotions. We're going to take this verse by verse and look at the first verse itself. Verse 1 says, Be still my soul, the Lord is on thy side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Leave to thy God to order and provide. In every change he faithful will remain. Be still my soul, thy best, thy heavenly friend. Through thorny ways leads to a joyful end. We see that all three verses have their own theme. And Ken told us this morning that you can take a whole lesson per verse, and he's exactly right on that. The first verse is looking at the fact that be still my soul, help me get through what I'm going through right now. Talking about going through difficult times. Talking about those that are against his side. He says, bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Lead to thy God in order and provide. So talking about going through a current issue. Talk about God being on his side. As we look at Psalm 118, the psalmist says, For my distress I called upon the Lord. The Lord answered me and put me in an open space. The Lord is for me, I will not fear. What can man do to me? The Lord is for me among those who help me. Therefore I will look with satisfaction on those who hate me. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in people. It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in noble men. Again, as you look at this verse, you're looking at someone who appears to be writing about some kind of current issues. even talking about those who are against him. And so I decided to go this route and looking at the fact that, again, the Lord is on my side. God is always on our side as long as we are striving to be faithful to him. And as Christians, no matter what we go through, if we're looking to be faithful to God and we're working every single day to do that, then we know that God is on our side. Just as the writer said here. It says, the Lord is for me, I will not fear. For what can man do to me? That's a powerful statement. What can man do to us? As we go through the Bible and look at it, especially the New Testament with the early Christians, Paul and Peter and even Jesus himself, what can man do? Man can destroy that body. Man can kill us. But he says, even with that, the Lord is with me. I will not fear, because what man cannot do, man cannot take our souls. So if we're faithful to God, it doesn't matter what anybody does, as long as I have my faith in God. Isaiah 41 verse 10, I've used this passage several times. God says, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will also help you. I will also uphold you with my righteous right hand. This is a reassurance to the Israelites in that as they're going through a tough situation, he sees word through through Isaiah rather, in that I am your God, I will be with you. Put your faith in me. He says, do not be afraid, for I am your God, I will help you. I will strengthen you. And then in Romans 8:31, we see the same sentence, where it says, what then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who is against us? Now, we talked about this probably several months ago, but I asked the question, how difficult is it to be a Christian in the United States? You know, we have certain rights and privileges that Christians across the world would love to have. We have so many opportunities and rights and chances to be faithful to God without fear for our lives. Now, there may come a day where that might change, but as of right now, nobody kept us from trying to be here tonight. Nobody stood outside those doors with any kind of guns or weapons to try to prevent us from worshiping God. No one threatened to beat us or physically harm us because we're coming to worship God. However, we do go through our own struggles. We do go through our own trials and temptations, and our own trials that we go through, where sometimes it is difficult, whether it's mentally, whether it's psychologically. Sometimes it is difficult, and even in our culture, to try to remain faithful to God. But Paul reminds us here, if God is for us, then who's against us? Even when it seems like the world is against us, even when it seems like the world is against Christianity, or our society or culture is against what God tells us to do, knowing that it doesn't matter what they think, it doesn't matter what they say, that God is with us if we are true to his commandments. This morning on the way here, I actually watched a video, or I listened to it. You didn't watch it because I was driving, but I was listening to a video. It was of a popular talk show that you would all know if I said what it was. And the whole, or rather the guest of the show was the person that actually plays Jesus in the series called The Chosen. And I haven't watched the series. I've heard a lot about it, but it's a television series that's based around the life of Jesus. And again, I haven't watched it. My understanding is that it's pretty accurate to the scriptures, but it was the actor on the show who plays Jesus, and it was a pretty liberal talk show to where they were trying to pull a few things out. You could tell it was not an easy interview. And they did throw him a few softball questions that I wasn't quite expecting, but I thought how difficult it is for him to sit there on that panel to where they're probably going to rip him apart. Probably had no idea what to expect. And they certainly didn't take it too easy on it, but sometimes it feels like the world is against us. It doesn't matter, because if God is for us, it doesn't matter about anything else. So it says, be still my soul, the Lord is on my side. It means that no matter what I go through, no matter who's against me, or no matter what internal struggles I'm dealing with, that God is with me as long as I'm trying to be faithful to him. Now, if I'm trying to do my own thing against God's will, I'm alone. But if I'm trying to be faithful to God, he will not forsake me. If I do my best to try to be faithful to God, then he will not leave me. And I'll say this, even if I turn away from God, God's still there. In those years that I was away from God, not going to church, doing things that I knew I should not be doing, God was still there. He's waiting for me to come back. And I'm thankful that he was there, because he's certainly with me today. As we look at the second verse, we see a change here. Verse 2 says, "Be still, my soul, thy God doth undertake to guide the future as he has the past. Thy hope, thy confidence, let nothing shake. All now mysterious shall be bright at last. Be still, my soul. The waves and winds still know that his voice who ruled them, while he dwelt below." What we're looking at here is that the first part of that says to guide the future as he has the past. Second verse here is looking at God's guidance. It's looking at the fact that God has a plan. And that God's plan has been there from the beginning. God's plan is going to be there in the future. God's plan is taking place right now. Again, this was written in 1752 or somewhere around that period, almost 300 years ago. Looking at God's plan in the past. If we go back to the Old Testament, look at what God instituted with Genesis, with Abraham, with Noah. Look what he did in regards to Jesus dying on that cross. And then looking at how that plan has played out over the last 2 years and will play out. God has a plan. We see in Jeremiah 29, it says, "For this is what the Lord says, when 70 years have been completed for Babylon, I will visit you and fulfill my good word to you, to bring you back to this place. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for prosperity, not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope." This is the message through Jeremiah to the Israelites. Again, saying, here's what's going to happen. I know the plans. I know the hope. Hang in there. I'm with you. God knows exactly what's coming next. Just as Jesus, as he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, praying for his life, knowing that he's about to be arrested and go through a brutal and cruel death, Jesus knew, because it's part of God's plan. God's got a plan. And that plan will always play out. As we see the plan for reassurance here to the Israelites. And then as we see in Romans chapter 8, verse 28, says we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. All things work together for good to those who love God. Now, does that mean that we're always going to have good fortune? Does that mean that things are always going to go our way and that no matter what, we're going to be taken care of? We talked the other night about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or rather last week, about the fact that they had a tough decision to make, either bow down and worship that statue or die a brutal death in that fiery furnace. And they said, our God will protect us, and even if he doesn't, then we'll be faithful to him. We'll be with him in heaven. And God did protect them. He saved their lives. It doesn't always work out that way in every situation. But regardless, if we're faithful to God, then no matter what we go through, the end result, the end plan, can still be in our favor. Even though this life may be difficult, even though we may go through difficult times, there are people that I know where their entire lives have had to suffer from one thing over another, whether that's emotionally, psychologically, or physically. But if they're faithful to God, and on the day of judgment, God allows them, Jesus allows them to meet them in heaven, and everything here on earth won't even matter. Because those plans right there, that plan right there is going to supersede anything else. So if we continue to work for God, if we continue to work for his purpose, we know that God is there with us because his plan will overcome in the end. In Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8, Paul says, "For by grace you've been saved through faith. And this is not of yourselves, it is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand, so that we would walk in him." Which God prepared beforehand. Think about God's plan in action as we read from beginning to end of the Bible. As God tells Abraham, gives him the promise of his seed, which again has been misinterpreted to meaning the seeds of his descendants. God meant the seed meaning Jesus Christ. That would come many, many years later. God knew right then. And as we look at the prophecies throughout the Old Testament, again, looking at Isaiah, God knew exactly what was to come. He wasn't playing it by ear. He doesn't play it by ear now. God has a plan. That plan will be done. And that includes for us. No matter what we go through, again, be still my soul because God has a plan. Even when evil is overtaking this world, even when it seems like evil is just overtaking things around us, our own society and culture, know that God has a plan, and that plan in the end will be victorious. We know that every knee will bow down to Jesus. I've said this before, but can you imagine the sight? Think about the most heinous people throughout history, the most evilest people you can think of, who said, I will never bow down to Jesus. I will do whatever I need to. How many lives they tortured and messed up and destroyed and murdered. Even they will bow down to Jesus. I think about people like Hitler and Stalin, Mao Zedong, who are responsible for millions upon millions of deaths. They will bow down to Jesus. We think about Nero and those that destroyed the early Christians 2,000 years ago. One day they will bow down to Jesus. And that's God's plan. If we're faithful to God, again, be still my soul, because God's plan will reign. That no matter how tough it may get for us, no matter how bleak it may look for us, God's plan is still in action. And we've got to have faith in that. It's been there since the days before we could ever think of, and it's going to be there all the way to the end. As we look at the third verse says, Be still my soul. The hour is hastening on, when we shall be forever with the Lord, when disappointment, grief, and fear are gone, sorrow forgot, love's purest joys restored. Be still my soul, when change and tears are past. All safe and blessed, oh, we shall meet at last. Verse 3 is looking about the future. It's looking about what is to come. The hour is hastening on, looking at what is to come. And what is to come? 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 1, Paul says, For we know that if our earthly tent, which is in our house, is torn down, we have a building from God, a house not made by hands, eternal in the heavens. We see a theme with all three verses. Verse 1 is talking about the struggles that he's going through. Verse 2 is talking about God's plan. Verse 3 is talking about the future of what is to come. Be still my soul, because great things are coming. Great things are arising. Again, if we're faithful to God, then we have an eternal home in heaven. Be still my soul, because the future is looking bright for those who are faithful to Him. Revelation 21, verse 1. As we look at John's vision here, it says, I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth passed away, and there is no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is among the people, and He will dwell among them, and they shall be His people, and God Himself will be among them. And He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will no longer be any death. There will no longer be any mourning, or crying, or pain. The first things have passed away. We can speculate all day long about John's vision here, and about whether this is a true physical description as to what heaven is going to be like, or whether this is more figurative. But we're told here that this heaven, this place that we're striving for, is greater than any place we could ever imagine. We see a glimpse here as to what we might see in heaven. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. No longer any death, no mourning, no crying, nor pain. Think about a place where there's no sorrow. A place where no one's brokenhearted. No one dies. No one goes through any suffering. No treatments. No nothing. We look at what happened this past week in Minnesota. Imagine that there be somebody here on this earth who can have it in their mind to be so evil. There's really only one way to put it. When you look at what was going through his mind based off of his writings and his videos, the things that he talked about, killing children, that was their primary goal. Think about, there's none of that in heaven. There's none of that in God's house. There's none of that in all of eternity with God and Jesus Christ. All of that stuff, that's Satan's work. All of that stuff, that's not meant for God. None of that will happen in heaven. As cruel and as harsh as it might be here on this earth, And not just today, but in years past, and what might come in the future, it's not going to matter because the glory of heaven is going to be so much better. So when the writer says here, be still my heart because the hour is hastening on, don't give up, because what's around the corner, what is laid out for us is so much better if we're faithful to God. Think about how great heaven might be. We can't imagine how great it might be. But we know that all this junk out here will not happen in heaven. We won't have to read about those stories. We won't have to cry for those children or those families. That won't have to happen. So be still, my soul, because better times are ahead for those that are faithful to God. If you're not already there, turn to page 87 in the big book. We're going to sing this song. I'm going to attempt to sing this song. So, Ken, if I get the first four notes out, then I should be okay. We're going to sing all three verses of Be Still My Soul. If you like, you may stand. Be still, my soul, the Lord is on thy side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Lead to thy God, who order and provide. In every change, he faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, thy best I have friend. Through thorny ways, to do a joyful end. Be still, my soul, thy God doth undertake to guide the future as he has the past. Thy hope, thy God, but it's let nothing shake. All now is near, we shall be bright at last. Be still, my soul, the waves and winds will roll. His voice to rule, then while we trail below. Be still, my soul, the hour is hasting on, when we shall be forever with the Lord. When is the Lord, grief and fear are gone, sorrow forgot, love's purest joys restored. Be still, my soul, when change and tears are past, all safe and blessed, oh, we shall be at last. You may be seated. Be still, my soul, means be patient. Means trust in God. It means put all our faith in Him. And no matter what we're going through, always look to Him. Look to God. Look to Jesus. Look to the one that gave His life on the cross for us. And if we do that, we have that faith, then we have to make sure that we remind ourselves that our life, our soul, is in His hands. Be still, my soul. I'm going to finish up with two verses here. Psalm 46, verse 10 says, Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our refuge. We see it in the Old Testament and the New Testament. We see it throughout many of the Psalms. And that God is with us if we are faithful to Him. If we are striving to live our lives for God, we know that God is with us. Matthew 11:28. Nobody can say it better than Jesus Himself. It says, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is comfortable, and my burden is light. You see, Jesus, when he was on this earth, said those exact words, saying, when things get heavy, when things get tough, put them on my shoulders. When things get heavy and tough, put them on God's shoulders. We take our troubles to them. Because when it comes down to it, they're the ones that take care of us. If we're faithful to them, then they're the ones that determine our fate. If we're faithful to them, they're the ones that can take us from this cruel world. They can take us from the pits of the damnation of hell itself and allow us to be with them in heaven. A place of no tears, a place of no death, of no sorrow, of no sickness. Think about how joyous it's going to be when those sing hymns in heaven, singing with the angels, how glorious that sounds. No sickness, no congestion, no nothing, just being with God. Everything being perfect. The whole point of this song is be patient. No matter what we're going through, God's in control. God is there for us while we're on this earth to take our troubles to take our burdens to. Jesus died for our sins for that very reason. And if Jesus can go through that kind of pain and torture for us, then that's who we should be confiding in. That's who we should put all of our faith into. Like I said this morning, if Jesus can do it, then how hard for it is for us to just put that faith into him. I want to leave you with this. As I was doing research for this, I've got a book here that was given to me. I've actually got a couple of copies of this that was given to me. And I heard of a story here that goes along with this song itself. It kind of gives stories about where the songs come from. And again, while there's not really a whole lot that goes along with the song in regards to why it was written, there was a story dating back to World War II that I thought was very interesting. And apparently this was a song that became pretty popular during World War II in a couple of areas. There was a U.S. minister who had been in China doing missionary work. He was taken as a prisoner of Japan during World War II. And in that Japanese internment camp, he taught those prisoners this song. But I found this first-hand account. This was a soldier, a man who was from Michigan, who served in World War II, who was in France. I don't know if he served through D-Day, but I'm going to read you what he said here about this song. He said, I had probably sung Be Still My Soul many times before, but it was not until I sang it in a small stucco church in a tiny village in France during World War II that it became part of my life. The war in Europe was going badly. The news from the front was disheartening. We had suffered reverses. We were edgy, confused, and discouraged. It was at this crucial time that some chaplain arranged a service in this quaint church somewhere in France. It seemed the roof of that little village church actually opened up as we were weary, dirty GIs, blended our voices under the leadership of that chaplain and the church's old punk organ. Halfway through the service, it happened. Softly the organ began, and we sang, Be still my soul, the Lord is on thy side. How badly it was needed. It was as though the Lord was speaking to me in a very personal way. Be patiently the cross of grief, our pain. The cross of war with its hardships, misery, separation, and pain. As we begin the second stanza of Be Still My Soul, thy God doth undertake to guide the future as he hath the past. God seemed to whisper, don't give up. I'm still in command, yes, even here. I'll guide the future as I have the past. The thoughts of dead and missing friends came as though I had choked up, and I sang, Be still my soul, though dearest friends depart. Soothing personal assurance at that moment in that spot. With renewed spirit, I was able to sing the final stanza. Be still my soul, when change and tears are past. All safe and blessed, we shall meet at last. Peace, either here or in eternity. As we left that little church, the peace I felt among the horrors of war was nothing but a gift of the Holy Spirit. God did not spare me and allow me to return to my loved ones, and his service still preserves me. What he's talking about here is that all the harshness that he was facing at that point in time. Again, I don't know what battles he was in. He could have been in D-Day, Battle of the Bulge, I don't know. We do know that war was brutal. It was ugly. And that war in France that he's talking about, where American soldiers were part of, millions of French civilians were killed. There was nothing but death and agony and gore everywhere you turned. And even though we came out of that war victorious, defeating Adolf Hitler, it didn't come without a very heavy human cost. What he's talking about here is that in that moment to where it felt like he couldn't go on, felt like this was never going to end, felt like he had lost friends and men next to him, brothers in service, he needed that. Be still, my soul, because God is with us. God is guiding us, and God will win out. We may not be fighting a physical war ourselves, but we are always fighting a spiritual war against Satan. And sometimes we feel like we're winning. Maybe sometimes we feel like we're losing. Or maybe Satan helps to push us back. Maybe sometimes it feels like we're going in reverse. But just as that soldier mentioned, we've got to make sure that we keep in mind that God is always with us. And that if we keep pushing on, if we keep fighting the good fight, we will prevail, just as God prevailed. It's a beautiful song. And again, there's a lot of deep meaning here, a lot of deep words. But it comes down to it, it means that God's in control. Jesus is in control. And we got to make sure to put our faith in him. Because when this world is destroyed, because they're going to destroy it, Jesus will come back. This world will be destroyed. Every single person who's ever lived will be judged based off of how they live and how thankful they are to God. Those that haven't lived like they should are going to go to hell. Those who are fortunate enough and faithful, we're looking at those going to heaven. And think about how great of a thought that is. That no matter what we see on this earth, we think about those children who died this past week and who die every single day. Whether it's cancer or gunshots, and people who are torn apart, who are tortured. The death and tragedy of just life itself. There's none of that in heaven. I don't know about you, but I can't wait for that day. I can't wait to where, if that's my name called, now if I'm fortunate enough to be in heaven with God, then I don't have to worry about all this stuff out here. Be still my soul, because it's coming one day. Lord will. As we end the lesson tonight, and we end this series, we do it with this mindset. We started off talking about heaven. Our first couple of lessons and songs were based around heaven, how great heaven is, and how great of an opportunity God gives us in regards to offering that chance, that second chance, that third chance, that fourth chance, that we have a way out of this cruel world and this cruel life and what Satan has planned for us. We've got to make sure that we do our part to make it happen. Just as we talked about this morning, make sure that we follow God's commandments. Make sure that we're as faithful as we possibly can be, so that when that time comes, because we do know that there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth, hopefully our name will be called. Hopefully our name is in the book of life. And how glorious a day that will be for us. Hope that everybody in this building that will be celebrating on the same day, that will be with each other in heaven. And think about all the tragedy that we see out here, all that will be gone. So be still, all of our souls, because the day is coming where Jesus will return and evil will be defeated for good. The question is, what side are we going to be standing on? If there's anyone here tonight who needs to be baptized, who needs to come forward to get forgiveness of your sins, turn your life over back to God, or to just get prayers that because you're going through a difficult time, this is a chance to get that right. Make sure that we leave this building as faithful as possible, with our hearts clean, our minds clean, and our conscience clean. So that if our time came tonight or tomorrow or this week, we are prepared to be with God in heaven. And that the pain and tragedy that we face here on this earth will be gone forever. If we can help anyone in any way, please come as we stand and as we sing.